Hey guys, and welcome to the top epic things of the 90s. Boom! Number 10! We got the fashion. Now, who doesn't remember the fashion of the 90s? That's right, this guy does, and you probably do too, with the acid wash blue jeans, white t-shirts, leather jackets, tie-dye, and of course, overalls and all the other weird and wacky stuff we did back in the day. Now, the fashion was definitely the best in the 90s. Look at back at all the decades. I mean, who can't remember the crazy weird hair we had and the crazy weird pants we had and the toques on backwards and our clothes on backwards and our shirts on backwards? It was awesome. This is number 9. What do we got? Well, we got the TV shows. Now, who doesn't remember the television shows of the 90s, especially the cartoons? I mean, the television shows of the 90s were filled with horrible, horrible storylines and just really terrible acting, but it was actually true, real acting, and it was amazing. I mean, just the comedic timing of some of these shows and just how unique they were. I mean, they were just really some of the greatest shows in history of television. The 90s definitely had the best television shows and cartoons. Number 8. What do we got? We got VHSs. Now, who doesn't remember VHSs and VHS players? Everybody does. I mean, every time you take the VHS out, 90% of the time, it would break. You'd get the tape inside. You'd have to rewind the tapes with the pencils, and every time you rented a video, you always had to rewind it before you brought it back. I mean, who doesn't remember these contraptions? They would always break on you all the time. You always had to get head cleaner for these things. I mean, they were just so awesome that they had to make it into my top 10 and make it into the top 8. Number 7, what do we got, guys? Well, boom. We got the Walkman. Now, who doesn't remember the Walkman? I mean, everybody back in the 90s was sporting one of these things in their pockets, on their waistbands, in their hands. I mean, they had such flimsy headphones with them all the time. I mean, you just gotta love them. You finished one side, you popped it out, turned it over, blast your tunes on the other side of it. I mean, the Walkman was definitely the accessory of the 90s. I mean, they were just so awesome. They had to make it into this category. You weren't cool unless you sported a Walkman back in the 90s. Boom, which brings us to number 6. Number 6 is the 90s accessories. Now, who doesn't remember the accessories of the 90s? I mean, you had weird sunglasses, and chicks had these weird looking things in their hair. We had these weird bright ass necklaces, and I mean, these weird, awesomely bright just bow ties, and I mean, everybody was dressed up really weird in the 90s, and they were all sporting these really cool, awesome decor accessories on them. I mean, they were just awesome. I mean, the bracelets of the 90s were epic as well. I mean, it was just so great. Number 5, what do we got? Boom. We got cassettes. Now, this, of course, goes along with the Walkman, but who doesn't remember cassette tapes? Like, they were just so great. You always had to spool them back up with your little pens and crayons and stuff. I mean, they were just awesome. Like, cassette tapes, I remember back in the day, I would always make my own mixed tapes, or I would record my own music on them, and boom, you had a demo right there. I mean, they were so awesome, so easy to use. They would break all the time. I loved them, and I know you did too. Cassette tapes are definitely, definitely number 5 for a reason. Now, number 4 is, guess what? Boom, the movies of the 90s. Now, the movies of the 90s, in my opinion, are definitely the best movies of all time. I mean, you had such great classics that people are still talking about to this very, very day. I mean, Drop Dead Fred was one of the best movies of all time, in my opinions, and I mean, it's definitely on this list. I mean, Dumb and Dumber, I mean, was such a great movie. I mean, all the movies that were done in the 90s were done so well. I mean, just the comedians and comedic timing in them, I mean, they were so great. They definitely stand the test of time forever. Number three, what do we got for the big three? Well, we got the music. That's right. Now, the 90s music definitely is like the greatest music of all time. I mean, you have the biggest, and best names in music history coming out of the 90s. I mean, nobody was able to touch 90s music before, and nobody's ever been able to touch the 90s music since. I mean, being a musician or a music fan in the 90s was the best time to be there. I mean, just the greatest names of all time came out of the 90s. Who doesn't remember Vanilla Ice? I mean, come on, right there. Number two, what do we got? Number two, I put down educational 90s films because I love educational 90s films. In my opinion, it's the greatest thing to come out of the 90s. I love watching these things. I mean, they're horribly done, they're horribly acted. It's so funny. I always love watching 90s educational films on really any subject because they are just so awesome. You need something to watch, I highly suggest you YouTube 90s educational films because they are just so funny and just so awesome to watch. You'll love it. Now, number one is a guy who deserves a category all on his own, and that is, of course, the late and great Kurt Cobain. He's the greatest artist in music history. I mean, this guy's a true icon. Like I said, he deserves his own category. I mean, he's just truly the greatest legend to ever come out of music. I mean, period, ever. Like, the guy is a true poet, true legend. He'll always live in our hearts, our minds, our memories. I love this guy. This guy is definitely number one most epic thing of the 90s. Well, that's all, folks. Thanks for watching, and subscribe. Do it.